Okay, so you're working in the defense industrial base, right? And CMMC Level 2 compliance is definitely on your radar.
Yeah, it's gotta be.
Maybe you're, feeling that pressure already, or maybe it's just this nagging worry. How much is this actually going to cost?
It's a huge question, a real challenge. But what if there's a clearer path, maybe a more budget-conscious one?
Exactly what we're digging into today. We've got this stack of material from a listener, some articles, transcripts,
Yeah.
bits from websites, all really focused on getting ready for CMMC Level 2.
Right. Practical stuff.
And our mission here for this deep dive is to pull out the most important, actionable insights from only this material we were given.
We're basically looking for a roadmap from these
A
sources.
practical roadmap, yeah. How do you tackle those 110 practices without, completely breaking the bank?
And what's really interesting about these sources, I thought,
Yeah.
is that they don't just describe the problem. They point to actual steps, specific resources even,
It feels very actionable. Like you could listen and actually walk away with a plan.
which is becoming critical. I mean, these sources make it pretty clear. Level 2 compliance isn't really optional anymore if you want to stay in the defense supply chain.
Okay, so let's unpack it then. You're looking at 110 security practices for Level 2. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Where does the material say you even start?
The sources we reviewed couldn't be clearer on this. The absolute foundational step is a gap analysis.
A gap analysis, okay.
You have to start there, comparing where you are right now against every single one of those 110 requirements.
Every single one. Wow. That sounds like a pretty massive job just to figure out your starting point.
It is, but the goal is twofold, right?
Yeah.
Identify what you're already doing okay, but more importantly, where are the holes? Where are the gaps?
Find the gaps. Okay. And the sources had some good news here, especially about that cost worry.
They did, yeah. That was interesting. They really stressed that you don't necessarily need this huge, upfront investment just for this first step.
Right. They specifically mentioned free tools for Level 1 and Level 2.
Yes, exactly. CyberGap was the example they named.
CyberGap, okay.
And the point the material makes is that a tool like that, a free one, lets you do a pretty thorough self-assessment.
So based on this material, using something free like CyberGap lets you find the gaps yourself. And it even helps you generate your SPRS score.
That's right, your Supplier Performance Risk System score. That's the self-reported score for NIST 800-171 compliance, which, CMMC Level 2 builds right on top of.
Gotcha. So it connects those dots.
And the sources kind of lay out the options for doing the gap analysis. You can DIY it with a tool.
Right.
Or you can bring in a certified professional. They specifically mentioned a Cyber AB certified CCP.
A CCP, that's a certified CMMC professional.
Yeah, basically a trained consultant who can guide you through that initial assessment if you don't want to go it alone.
Okay, so the main takeaway from this first phase, whether you use a tool yourself or get a CCP involved, seems to be the material says figure out the gaps first.
Absolutely.
Know exactly where the weaknesses are so you can focus your effort and, crucially, your money effectively. Avoid just, spending randomly.
Focus is key. That's the message from the sources on step 1. Know where to aim your resources.
All right, so gap analysis done. You've got your list. What's next, according to the sources? Fixing things, right? Remediation.
Remediation, yeah. And the material seems pretty insistent that you don't want a messy, disorganized approach here.
Right, it's not just ticking boxes.
No, definitely not. Remediation needs a structure. It needs a process you can actually demonstrate later to an auditor. You need to show how you fixed each gap.
Okay, and that's why the sources make a specific recommendation for how to manage this part.
They do, a strong one. The recommendation, pulling straight from the material, is using a CMMC-specific GRC platform.
GRC, governance, risk, and compliance.
Exactly. That's sort of the central piece for managing the remediation phase, according to these sources. They use CyberComply as an example of this kind of platform.
CyberComply. Okay, so based on what we read, what's the actual purpose of using a GRC like that for CMMC? What does it do?
Its role, as they describe it, is basically your command center for getting compliant. You take your gap analysis results, you load them in, and the platform helps you generate your PONM, that's your plan of action, and milestones, your roadmap for the fixes. It helps build your SSP, your system security plan.
Okay, the core documents.
Yeah. But maybe most importantly, it's where you gather and manage all your evidence, all the proof. Policies, screenshots, logs, everything you need to show you've met the requirements.
Having all that proof in one place sounds way better than spreadsheets and scattered folders.
Oh, definitely.
And the sources mentioned something really interesting about the GRC platform itself. Something about its risk.
Yes. This was a crucial point in the material, I thought. Platforms like CyberComply, the example given, are designed not to store your actual sensitive data.
Meaning no CUI or FCI inside the compliance tool itself.
Exactly. Your controlled unclassified information, your federal contract information, it doesn't live inside the GRC platform.
Huh. That's actually really smart, isn't it? So the tool managing your CUI compliance isn't another place where CUI could potentially be exposed?
Precisely. According to the sources, this dramatically lowers the security burden and the risk associated with the compliance management tool. It's managing the metadata about your compliance, the plans, the evidence location, the status.
But not the sensitive crown jewels themselves.
Right. It avoids making the compliance tool itself a high-value target.
That seems like a very practical, streamlined approach. Keeps things auditable, structured,
Right.
and avoids that mess the sources hinted at if you try doing this manually. They had some figures, didn't they, about how much harder manual is?
Yeah, they gave some pretty stark multipliers, like potentially 5 times harder for setup, 4 times for gap analysis, 4 times for evidence management.
Wow.
0.3 times for tracking remediation, 5 times for audit prep, even 4 times harder for managing access control and CUI compared to using a dedicated GRC.
Okay, those numbers really drive home the point about using the right tool for the job here. So we've got gap analysis, structured remediation with a GRC. What about getting expert help? The sources talked about that too, right? When to bring people in.
They did, and the suggestion from the material is to be strategic about it. Don't just hire consultants for everything.
Be targeted.
Exactly. Certified help, like that CCP again, can be really useful during the remediation phase itself, offering guidance while you're actually working through your plan in the GRC.
Okay, so help during the fixing it stage. And then the sources highlighted a really critical step before you face the official auditors.
Yeah.
The C3PAO.
Yes, the CMMC third-party assessment organization, the company doing the final certification audit.
Right. What's the step before that?
A very strong recommendation in the material. Do a mock assessment, a dress rehearsal.
A dry run. Makes perfect sense. Who do the sources suggest should do this mock assessment?
They recommend using a certified CMMC assessor, a CCA, and ideally the material suggests finding a lead CCA.
A lead CCA. Why the emphasis on lead?
Because, according to the sources, lead CCAs are the ones with experience actually running the full official CMMC assessments.
Ah, okay. So they know exactly what the real thing looks like.
Right. The whole idea of the mock assessment is to simulate that real audit experience as closely as you possibly can. Find the weak spots, the documentation gaps, the things you might have missed before the official auditor walks in the door.
It's like that analogy they used. Testing your parachute before you jump.
Exactly that analogy. You want to find any problems while you can still easily fix them.
So the mock assessment verifies your documentation, checks alignment, basically confirms you're truly ready for prime time.
And the sources also hinted that these CCAs, especially maybe the lead ones, might even help you evaluate or perhaps negotiate with the C3PAs for the final official audit.
Oh, interesting. Help navigate that final step too.
Yeah, the material touched on evaluating C3PAOs. Considering factors like the scope, how big is your assessment boundary, how many people, locations.
The type of CUI you handle.
Right. Your IT setup cloud, on-prem, hybrid, how ready you actually are, is your SSP solid, is your PONM mostly closed out, and of course, your timeline.
And there are quite a few C3PAOs to choose from, right?
Over 70 accredited ones now, according to the sources, with different specialties, different costs. They mentioned the Cyber AB Marketplace or directory as the place to find them.
Okay, this really does feel like a practical step-by-step guide emerging just from this material we reviewed. Let's try and synthesize it all. Based only on these sources, what's that smart, budget-conscious roadmap for Level 2 prep look like?
Okay, pulling it together from the sources, the path they lay out seems to be.
Start smart. Use a free tool. CyberGap was the example for an accurate self-gap analysis first. Know where you stand before you spend.
Step 1, know thyself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Step 2, manage strategically. Use a dedicated CMMC GRC platform, CyberComply was mentioned, to structure your fixes, build your PONM and SSP, and crucially, gather all your evidence efficiently without putting CUI in the platform itself. Keep that risk down.
Step 2, get organized with the right tool.
Right. And step 3, target your expertise.
Yes.
Bring in certified help where it counts most. A CCP, perhaps, for guidance during remediation. And critically, a CCA, ideally a lead CCA, for that thorough mock assessment before the real C3PAO audit. Test that parachute.
Step 3, use experts strategically, especially for the dress rehearsal. So it really boils down to working smarter, doesn't it? Focusing time, effort, money where it actually delivers value, not just, spending without a clear plan.
That definitely seems to be the practical roadmap presented in these sources.
Achieve compliance effectively, and as this material strongly suggests, maybe without quite as much expense as you might fear.
It seems that way. It's about being methodical.
And they did give that website address for the tools they talked about.
Yes, the sources pointed to www.cybercomply.us. That was mentioned for the tools discussed.
Got it. Well, this deep dive, just focusing on this listener-provided material, has been, I think, incredibly insightful, very practical.
Yeah.
And, pulling back and looking at everything we discussed from these sources, it leaves you with a pretty powerful thought. Getting CMMC compliant, Level 2 especially, it's becoming mandatory, right? If you want to stay in the defense game.
Seems unavoidable, yeah.
But based on what these sources lay out, paying more than you absolutely have to pay to get there, that seems to be optional.
That's a good way to put it. The costs might be more controllable than people think if they follow a smart process like the one outlined here.
So, the question for you, the listener, based only on these steps and strategies we pulled from this specific material, how can you apply this kind of strategic, budget-conscious thinking to your own CMMC journey?
Yeah. Which parts of this roadmap could you start implementing now? Something to definitely consider.